when the brother asked here, what do I do to protect myself from possibly being a victim, it reminded me of an experience I had as a younger woman. One of my first jobs out of college. I am now, and have probably always been a idealist or a hopeless romantic or whatever it is. I am fueled and guided by faith, and I give thanks for that, and I believe in the best of all people. So, when I moved to DC after college for my first job, because I thought working for peace was everything, I really did. I really thought, I'm going to work for peace because that's the end of racism and sexism and homophobia and poverty. I did believe this. So I worked for a peace group on Capitol Hill. And really would not accept the idea that someone would be targeted just because of their skin color or because of their gender. Really worked against it. Really wanted in my heart and gut to not believe that. That there was no conscious, no conscious conversation and decision to go after young black men. That it could have been the collective consequences of racism or all of these oppressions, but not conscious. Until an evening when a friend, now I'm a large woman, I don't know if y'all noticed, I'd stand for you if I could, but I think it's a little much. But I'm a larger than average woman, and a friend of mine who'd just come from Ireland and I were standing outside of what was then Sainsbury's, which is where I worked, my first job out of college, in Southwest DC. It's late at night, we're standing outside of the office is closed, it's very, very late at night. He'd just come back from Ireland and brought some alcohol from Ireland, some Irish thing, it's an important thing from Ireland. Can't remember it, but it's special. So we're out in front of the street and we're tasting this in public, which is probably not legal. And we're loud and boisterous and large. I'm large, he's larger than me. He's white, of course Irish, I'm me. And across the street, there was two young African-American men, maybe in their, not older than 16, I know, sitting on steps in front of another office building, just talking. And he and I are talking boisterously. And then, suddenly there's 2 cop cars. And then there's 4 cop cars. I about lost it. Now, I hadn't had a lot to drink. I'd taken a couple of sips, but I'm not really a drinker. But he was, it was a gift, whatever. He was just back home. I took a couple sips. But I started to get loud. And not just loud, but boisterous. I moved myself into the street and was yelling at the police. Y'all, they didn't even turn around. They didn't turn around because I was not the target. Now, subsequent to that experience, many times while I lived in DC, in many ways, including doing some outrageously illegal things, in front of the DC Police Department, in front of their offices, me and some friends couldn't get even somebody to even talk to me. But my brothers came to visit, and from walking from my house to the corner store to get juice for breakfast and back, 3 times they got talked to. And it's no further than from here to, from here to across the street, y'all, and back. So, the reality of racial profiling is severe and very real. And the reason I say the word severe is, at least in my community, it's affected our culture. What I mean by that is, when I was a young woman, some 40 years ago, the concept was new and we fought back as a community. Now, the culture is, it's Saturday night, 11 o'clock, you better be in the house. Right? The cultural norm now is, if you are a young black man, you better not be behind the wheel of a car, at least in North Carolina where I live, at Saturday night after a certain time. And that cultural shift has shaped everything in that community. It also affects the communities of people who aren't documented. It's also starting to affect y'all's community in terms of what you think is okay, what you say to your 7-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 17-year-old. That is not all right. Now, the exercise I'd like y'all to do, you have index cards that y'all saw that were on your seats. I invite you, and you don't have to participate if you don't want to, but to write down an experience of racial profiling that you've heard of, you've experienced yourself, or somebody you love experienced, and put the year that it happened on there. That's what I'd like you to do. And then, probably not right now, in the ideal world, there's some cards over here on the floor. There are several different layers of the cards. One layer shows policies that this government has enacted based on racism and discrimination. They go back as far as 1704. We could have gone back into the 1500s or whatever, but we started with 1704. One of the other lines shows acts of racial profiling that have happened primarily to people of African descent. And then another line shows acts of racial profiling that has happened to people primarily of Latino or Chicano descent. And then there's a line that shows acts of racial profiling that have happened to people that are South Asian and Muslim in terms of religion. And they're all over there. Now, in an ideal world, they'd be around the wall, and y'all would take what you've written now and put it in there, and then all of us would do what's called a gallery walk, and we'd walk around and look at what everybody else wrote, and we'd look at what's here. So when you take a break later on, please go look. I'd ask you to do that now, but I think 30 folks or 40 folks trying to hunker over there and look at everything won't quite work. What you will see, however, and what it'll be more powerful if you add your own experiences, is that acts of racial profiling go as far back as the 1700s, as recently as yesterday, and affect all of these communities. Not just people of African descent, or people who aren't documented, or people whose religion is not Christian, but there's information there about folks who are native in this country, information there about folks who are gay or lesbian, and it, I hope, helps to demonstrate both how deep and broad the problem is, and therefore encourages you to understand and participate in an equally deep and broad response in terms of building power and organizing. Now, one of the things I do want to share, and I'll be done in about 5 minutes, so I'll be ahead of time, yay. One of the things I want to share, though, is that I say these things as if they are, and they are, ideologically positive, hopeful, but perhaps not realistic. I'm not limited by that, because I know the imagination of the people that live in this country, and I know it's limitless. So what people think might be possible, I will not allow to limit my vision of what we can collectively do. But I do know that because in the same way our culture has been shaped and changed in my community, so that on a Saturday night after 11 o'clock you can't be behind the wheel, our culture's also been shaped in ways that say, don't you talk to those people. You know, if you associate with those black folks, folks are going to think you're messing with drugs. You know, if you go over there and hang out with those undocumented folks, you're going to get in trouble. So I know that for each of us, we have to culturally challenge ourselves and go beyond our own comfort zone if we're going to build this sense of community. And the first piece about that is to become conscious of, where do I carry privilege? I named before, I'm Catholic, which to me is not strictly Christian, which is why I say I pass for Christian. I'm happy to be Catholic. I would have been a nun if I'm not who I am now, and in some ways I am quite a nun. But I'm able-bodied, I went to college, I'm a U.S. citizen. All of those are privileges. So identify the way that you have privilege, but also answer the question of how have the chronic conditions of oppression limited your own ability to access and use your power to create transformational change. Because there are ways, even ways you're not aware of. And if you do that for yourself, if you're able to identify, how is the fact that every day I know that I'm under surveillance, that I'm on the list of people that might be dangerous, how has that affected your own ability to use your own voice, to feel and use your own power, to share that power with others? Because as you answer that question and unpack and sort of weed the weeds out of that soil that is your bed, your planting bed for power, it will help you develop the skills to be able to connect with people who aren't as similar to you in background, and help it feel a little more comfortable to push your own comfort levels. So I hope you put something on your cards and you add them to the timeline here. Over here is the 1700s, on this side is 2001, at a time that fits in terms of break and that kind of thing. And I appreciate having a chance to be reflective with you about this a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, George, for that. We will because we are, I'm glad, running ahead of schedule, and that's my job, so I'm antsy about that. But we will have then time to see the board. I will make sure that we have that availability. Thank you for that, George.